Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Brewers Perspective Recaps in the Grand 2-6, and we have a great day one. Brewers versus the White Sox, they win 14-2, Jacob Mizrowski with a win, Shane Smith with a loss. Alright, first up out of the game versus Chase Madroth, it'd be a 99-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle, which would make it 1-0, but it's nothing. Jacob Mizrowski shoves after this. Like I said, you'd strike out the side after. Bottom of the first, Bryce Ring will lead it off with a double off of Shane Smith, and after that, Shane Smith will throw 1-2-3. Top of the second, Austin Hayes would ground out for out number one, and then Munetaka Murakami in his first MLB at-bat would walk. Everson Pereira and Edgar Carroll would strike out back-to-back to end out the inning. Bottom of the second, Jake Bauers would start off by striking out, and then Sal Frelick would get walked. David Hamilton in his first Brewers at-bat would reach on a catcher's interference. Garrett Mitchell would get walked, and then an RBI single by Joey Ortiz would tie it up at 1. Bryce Ring would be out number 2 on a strikeout, then a bases-clearing double by William Contreras to make it 4-1. Sean Newcomb would enter the game for the White Sox, and you get the final of the inning to Christian Yelich on a groundout. Top of the third, Luis Angel Acuna would be out number 1 on a pop-out, Chase Madroth would get walked, and then Jacob Mizrowski would strike out Colson Montgomery and Miguel Vargas back-to-back to end out the inning. Bottom of the third, Sean Newcomb would throw 1-2-3. Top of the fourth, Jacob Mizrowski would start by striking out Andrew Benintendi, then Austin Hayes would hit a single. Munetaka Murakami would get walked again, Everson Pereira and Edgar Carroll would strike out back-to-back once again to end out the inning. Bottom of the fourth, David Hamilton will lead off with a single in its first Brewers hit. Garrett Mitchell will be out number 1 on a sacrifice, and David Hamilton would steal third base. An RBI single by Joey Ortiz would make it 5-1. Bryce Ring would be out number 2 on a groundout. William Contreras would get intentionally walked by Sean Newcomb. Then Christian Yelich would hit an RBI single, making it 6-1, which would then turn into an out. Top of the fifth, Jacob Mizrowski would throw 1-2-3. Bottom of the fifth, Tyler Gilbert would enter the game for the White Sox. He'd start by getting the first out to Andrew Vaughn on a groundout. Then Jake Bauers would hit a single. And then take a look at this at-bat. Sal Frelick versus Tyler Gilbert. Bang! Out to right field, and that one is gone. You know my reaction to that one is, yes! The first Brewers home run of the year. Sal Frelick, 407 feet at 106.5 miles an hour. That is a pretty goated home run for the first home run of the year. After that home run, David Hamilton would get walked, and then Garrett Mitchell and Joey Ortiz would get back-to-back flyouts to end out the inning. Top of the sixth, Aaron Ashby would enter the game for the Brewers, and he would throw 1-2-3. Bottom of the sixth, Jordan Hicks would enter the game for the White Sox. He'd start by giving up a single to Bryce Terang. Then he'd be caught stealing. William Contreras would get walked. Then Christian Yelich would get walked, and then an RBI single by King Vaughn would make it 9-1. Jake Bauers would be out number 2 on a pop-out. Sal Frelick would get walked, and then bases loaded walk to David Hamilton would make it 10-1. Jadison Paez would enter the game for the White Sox, and he'd give up a bases loaded walk to Garrett Mitchell this time, making it 11-1. And then Luis Rengifo would be out number 3 on a groundout. Top of the seventh, Grant Anderson would enter the game for the Brewers, and he would throw 1-2-3. Bottom of the seventh, Bryce Ring would lead it off with a walk. William Contreras would be out number 1 on a pop-out. Christian Yelich would hit a single. Then Brandon Lockridge would be out number 2 on a force-out. Oh, and then you know what time it is. Jake the Rake Bauers out to right. A 3-run shot off of Jadison Paez, 361 feet at 108.6 miles an hour. 44-degree launch angle. That's kind of crazy, but at least it's a home run. I kind of called this stuff. Let's freaking go. 14-1 Brewers. After the home run, Sal Frelick would be out number 3 on a groundout. Top of the 8th, DL Hall would enter the game for the Brewers. He'd start by giving up a single to Luis Angel Acuna. Chase Madroth will get walked, and then Colson Montgomery would be out number 1 on a strikeout. Miguel Vargas would get walked, and then Lennon Sosa and Austin Hayes would strike out back-to-back to end out the inning. Bottom of the 8th, Jordan Leisure would enter the game for the White Sox, and he would throw 1-2-3. Top of the 9th, Jake Woodford would enter the game for the Brewers, and he'd start by giving up Munetaka Murakami's first Major League home run / hit. It was hit 384 feet at 103 miles an hour with a 31-degree launch angle. After that, Jake would throw 1-2-3 to end out the game. Alright, what a hot start from the Brewers. They win 14-2. Way better than last year's opening day. That is for dang sure. Anyways, the Brewers' respective hitter of the game goes to Jake Bauers, going 2 for 5 with a home run and 3 RBIs. And the pitcher of the game goes to, obviously, Jacob Mizrowski for pitching 5 innings, 11 strikeouts. That is the new Brewers franchise opening day record, along with giving up 2 hits and 1 run.